Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's Brave Cat here once again with another Frontier Signals update. So I'm going to start things off here again with the space weather, where things have been pretty quiet and pretty mild, but we still have ongoing potential for solar flares with more sunspots entering the Earth-facing side. So right now we've had a M-class flare, which may or may not have a potential CME impact coming towards us. And I believe as well on the Endless Spiral here. So it doesn't have anything else on here besides the previous plasma filament eruption that happened. So that could be just barely grazing us today. And then we also do have just a couple of minor coronal holes. So those are starting to face away, but we have the one in the central region and the one down south. So we could definitely see a small uptick once again in the solar wind and potentially some minor instability happening there. But the thing that interests me the most right now is once again these sunspots coming in from the far side. So we have this blue region here. We've seen, roughly about half of it has now entered the Earth-facing side. And just looking up here, there is a couple more dark spots that could contain sunspots, but it looks like after that things should be pretty much in the clear. But that being said, going into April here, we are going to have overall quite a few different sunspots and sunspot groups facing us. None of them are really too monstrous in size, and none of them are really too magnetically complex, but it looks like there is still going to be potential for flaring. And this south region here that has just popped up, this wasn't really seen on the far side imagery here, so there was nothing going on down here, and then all of a sudden we see this ugly thing pop up. So just based on what we can see from it right now, we do have some magnetic complexity going on here with the different polarities kind of squashed in between each other. And it looks like this is the region that actually flared off at some point while it was directed away, luckily. So that is what we're going to be looking for in the near future. And, well, let's see, was there anything else here? There was. I noticed on the orbital hazards here, there's quite a few charging hazards going on pretty much all the way around. But other than that, things are relatively stable in those regards. So moving on to earthquakes over here. Take a quick look at the tremor map. So this is looking at the entire previous week up until today. And with a total of 780 different tremors or slow slip events on here, it's not really looking like too much is going on, but we do have a decent amount of activity going on across the west coast here. So if we take that to Earthquake 3D, looking at roughly the last 24 hours of activity, and let's just bring all the tremors back really quick. So things have increased slightly once again, and in this stack of tremors by San Francisco, there is a couple of 3s in the mix here, and some felt reports to go along with those. So if I just bring that out a little bit there's a 3.7, 3.4, and some stuff off the coast. Bringing up this 3.7 here, there is 50 felt reports, but nothing too crazy there, just a tremor basically. But we do see a couple of other events going on here. So looking at Japan, there was a 6.5 up here. Again, nothing too crazy, but it is within this cluster swarm of 4s. And then going from that, we see a new 5 over here near Afghanistan. And this is, one of the reasons why I use this overlay is because you see the directional arrows here, and they pretty much line up right where a lot of activity happens. I mean, they are also placed along major plate boundaries, but still it's like, the theory here is that let's say, for example, this 6.5 happened, and then after that, this 5.3 happened. And so we could presume that, from the same seismic wave that produced the 6.5, released that energy and, lost some of that steam, traveled over here, and then also released a 5.3. So that is kind of some of the preliminary frontier science behind, the way this overlay is set up. And of course it is made by Dutchsinse. Never leave that out. So going into Europe here, we do have a new swarm of earthquakes, similar to what we see going on over in Greece, but this time over in the Aegean Sea. So it's kind of moved locations a little bit. Now it's directly in between Western Turkey and Greece, where we've seen previous loads of activity. And then taking things over here into Italy, I'm going to go once again over here, where I think I figured out what is going on with this chart here. So it says, magnitude 3 plus, but it appears that only really means anything between a 3 and a 4. So we have 2 new earthquakes between a 3 and a 4 that seem to be recorded just fine on this chart. But I guess if anything happens 4 or greater, then I guess they just don't put that on there. That's just not part of this data. So I find that a little bit weird, but that seems to be how it works. There's not really any comprehensive description regarding that, but that seems to be how that works. So that being said, this 4 that struck was up here again in the mountains, and then the other activity down here south in the Mediterranean Sea. So we still have some activity residual happening over here in Europe, presumably from the activity that happens over here. So let's turn those back up here and drag things out just a little bit here. So again, we can see the deep 7.5 that struck, and we haven't had too much shallower activity resulting from that. A couple of duplicates over here, and doesn't look like anything's going on in Australia. So just turn that off here. Oh, it wasn't even turned on. So okay, no, it looks like, yeah, we do have quite a lot of stuff going on over here, but nothing actually new resulting from that. So all the 6s, the 7.5, we have yet to see that energy fully disperse yet. But over here in Central America, we do have another few somewhat deep earthquakes over here by these volcanoes, and I don't really see any major progressive events happening at most of these locations here. A lot of the same usual stuff. Nothing has gone down in the alert levels, but also nothing has really gone up either. So let's see. So moving on from that, I just want to again make a quick shout out over here on the Solar Killshot Network. It is once again one of the best places for not just frontier ideas and science and community organizing, but it is one of the best communities for just open-mindedness in terms of looking at everything that's going on, right? So there could be a lot of doom and gloom aspects, but this is where you actually prepare for those events, and this is part of the Suspicious Observers community. However, I could still see people from outside of that network coming in here and finding some connections, finding some answers, and just connecting with other people that definitely have similar down-to-earth ideas that many other preppers do. It's just there's, I guess, more advanced levels to it as well. And this is also where I am doing the challenge action routine. So, you go over here to events, and we've got this call here tonight to get together with each other and discuss, what's been going good for us, what we need to work on, etc., with, goals, pledges, all that sorts of thing. And it really, stuff like that really does help to just kind of keep on track with our day-to-day lives and all the constant bombardment of new information that we get from whatever's going on. So even though there's all sorts of things to potentially be fearful about going on in the world, you know, being part of these communities really helps kind of extinguish a lot of that fear and instead just be prepared for it, and in some cases even embrace some of it, because, well, change is constant. You can never stop the tide of change. So going with the flow and doing your best to kind of navigate those challenges is really the only healthy way to progress. So with that, that'll pretty much wrap things up for today's video. Got some good updates going to be rolling down the pipeline for the website, so I'm pretty excited for that. And anyways, hope y'all enjoyed, got something out of it. Please like and subscribe for more. Share this video if you dare, and I'll catch you all in the next.